welcome to the Kolbecast, episode 241. Thank you for joining us. Today, Kolbe's own Vanessa Delgado and Elyse Williams return to the Kolbecast to discuss a mid-year check-in. Many Kolbe students have wrapped up first semester, have taken a break for Christmas, and are returning to their studies. From their experiences homeschooling moms, Vanessa and Elyse discuss the value of reflecting on what has worked well and what hasn't, and taking the time to make adjustments and plan ahead for a strong finish to the school year. We hope that you'll enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, Kolbe homeschooling mom of 4 lads and lasses, liturgical musician, popcorn, and podcast fanatic.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and chief homeschooling officer for Kolbe Academy.
All right, we're doing a mid-year check-in today, and for that, we've got 2 seasoned homeschooling moms who also serve on the Kolbe staff, Elyse Williams, who is a Kolbe advisor, and Vanessa Delgado, who works in curriculum development. They've each been on the Kolbecast before, so I'm delighted to say welcome back, you two.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Very happy to be here.
We're glad to have you back and visit with you. It's been too long. But we met Vanessa in episode 107 and Elyse in episode 207. So that's been a while for both of you. So Vanessa, tell us a bit about you for folks who haven't yet listened to that episode, since we're well beyond that in the catalog. Y'all go back and listen to that when you get a chance. But Vanessa, tell us a little bit about you and then catch us up since we first met you.
Well, Vanessa Delgado, obviously. I have been with Kolbe, I want to say 3 years. I lose track of time at some point. I might be going on 4 very soon, but very, very happy to be here. We started homeschooling during COVID. I studied engineering originally and then did that for several years. And when the kids started in school, I transitioned into teaching, first high school and then middle school. And I loved that. But when COVID hit, we decided we wanted to kind of try homeschooling this 1 year and see how it went. And we decided to cut the salary completely and thought, well, I don't know how this is going to work, but we will make it work and God will provide. And we absolutely loved it. And my husband was offered a transfer from Miami, where our home was, to the Keys. And so we are part-time in the Keys now and part-time in Miami. We're in an RV, which is very fun during the weeks. Well, he's working, and then we travel back home to Miami during the weekends, and we're still doing that. We have been doing that for quite a few years now, still enjoying it. I'm very happy to be a part of the Kolbe family, and that how much it has worked for us with our very unique way of traveling and making homeschool work and everything kind of work together. It's been just wonderful for us.
That's so fascinating. And you talk more about that in the episode 107 that I mentioned, Wander and Wonder. I think there are several Kolbe families who are quite mobile. They move around quite a bit. And that's one of the things that attracts them to Kolbe is the ability to do that. So, and actually here coming up shortly in our episode lineup, we're going to have a conversation with a Kolbe student who travels extensively with her family in an RV and all over the world, really. So that's very interesting to hear from folks who make that work. Elyse, how about you? We got to introduce you to our Kolbecast listeners in episode 207. Catch us up. What have you been up to since then?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Elyse Williams. I've been with Kolbe now. This is our 16th year of homeschooling. So we've been here a while through the transition into the online format. I have 4 kiddos. Can't even really say kiddos anymore because most of them are grown and gone from home now. I have 1 senior in high school who'll graduate in May, and he's excited to go to his college in August, and that'll be exciting. This whole year really is going to be an exciting year in my family. My second son just got engaged, and he's getting married in the fall, so we're very excited about that. So yeah, that's exciting. We live in North Texas, and I'm almost done with my first year of advising, and I truly enjoy speaking with parents. That's one of the funnest things, I think, because you get an idea about where they are and what kind of help they need, and we're just glad to be able to support them. So it's been a wonderful year so far. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Good deal. I know you've offered a great deal by way of your experience and your concern for the families, and a huge blessing to to many of them, as are you, Vanessa, and your curriculum development. Tell me, what is your kind of array of Kolbe? How do you make use of the Kolbe curriculum? Online, offline, mix of them? How's that work for
We
your
do
family?
a complete mix of the three. We're doing live online, asynchronous, and traditional homeschool. We found that each child is a little bit different, which I mean, it's just standard for everybody's family. You kind of start off and you think everybody's the same and we're all going to do the same. And then, you start to learn and adjust. And we've even found that some subjects are better live online, and some subjects we can do asynchronous, and some subjects they really do like to do independent paper and pencil. Some subjects it's with me involved a lot, paper and pencil. So it really just depends, but we definitely do mix and match. We make full use of all of the resources that Kolbe has for us, definitely.
And that takes some just kind of going through it to sort out what's yeah. And that segues nicely into our conversation we're having today, just sort of a mid-year check-in. When this episode drops, it's the beginning of the year 2025. Vanessa, sticking with you for a minute. At this point in a school year, kind of what are you thinking? Where are you in terms of how are things going? What's coming up next? How am I approaching that? Just sort of all that sort of stuff. Where are you in the middle of a school year? What are you thinking about?
So the biggest thing is how are we doing in terms of each subject, but also time-wise. This is about the time of year that I start to worry about or just think about, projections. What am I due to finish this? How long is it going to take us? Are we going to be done in February, or are we going to be done in July with certain subjects? So I'll look at how many lessons we have left. I'll look at the calendar. I start to look at, vacations or holidays and things that I know are going to kind of get in the middle and say, okay, this week's out. Let's, just for the sake of scheduling, crop out or count out 4 or 5 weeks just because, we'll get sick, or there'll be field trips, or there'll be activities, and then say, all right, now let me, toss out how many lessons, how many days a week, how many weeks do we have? And then I start to see, okay, we need to speed up on this one, really need to concentrate here. And then, okay, we're doing really well on this subject. It might be good to take a couple weeks off or start to do alternating days. I also look at what's working and what isn't. So I'll give you an example. Last year, mid-year, we were doing history. We're doing world history, and we got to medieval history, and my son was just absolutely marveled with everything that was medieval history. And we had never done a full-blown, dive into medieval history. And it was right about this time of the year. And I said, you know what, let's do a pause on the world history and let's do a deep dive into medieval history. And so I researched a couple of different curriculums that were just focused on medieval history. And I was able to find one. And we ended up spending the rest of the school year focused on medieval history, doing medieval readings and literature and all that. And it was so awesome. And we ended up picking up the rest of world history now this semester. So we're just finishing that up now. And then we're going to dive into Greek and Roman history. So I took the opportunity mid-year to realize this was something that they were really enjoying, and we had never really taken a moment to focus on. And I thought it was a perfect opportunity to say, instead of letting us finish and then doing it afterwards, now that they're engaged and enjoying it, let's do a deep dive now and do projects. And it was really neat. It was awesome to do that. And it's the perfect example of kind of the reflection that I do this time of year, and what's working, and also what is it? Sometimes this is not working. We got to think of something new to try starting in January.
Yeah, and at Kolbe, there's all sorts of opportunities for flexibility, like you've described in your own switching up through your curriculum, and also the changing up in course formats to varying degrees, we'll say. Elyse, do you want to speak a little bit to that about changing up course formats in the middle of a school year?
Yes, it is. It's doable. The first thing that I would say, the first line of communication about these kind of changes is to reach out to your advisor and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of. This is what's working. This is what's not working for us. Is there a way we could do a different section of this class? Is there a way that we could change formats from traditional homeschool to online, or from asynchronous to online, or actually from online to asynchronous? So there's a lot of different options for you as a parent. And the best person that would, be able to help you along with this is your advisor. Of course, as a parent, with the principle of subsidiarity, it ultimately be your decision. However, Kolbe is here to help you with that transition, meaning if you're going from a traditional homeschool format to a online format, sometimes there are certain things that have to be done, like placement tests. And, when you're going at mid-year, that's sometimes a good time to be able to make those changes. And your advisor can help you get set up with that, help admissions get set up with that, help the dean of the elementary school or dean of the high school know how to help you and get, going on that. Because it's not like you change it and we just leave you alone. We're there to help you every step of the way. So yes, those changes are doable. As it gets further on, 2 to 3 weeks into the semester, it might be more on a case-by-case basis. But so if you're thinking about it now, it's a great time to email your advisor or to call them and make an appointment and talk with them about it. There is a Help Center article about the mid-year enrollment. So when you go into that, it'll give you a whole bunch more information that you can find out before you talk to your advisor, just so you have an idea about what changes that you're wanting. A lot of times when you are in online, you feel like there's not a lot of changes that you can make, or you're not exactly sure, did this course fit my student well? Do we need to audit? It's like, for instance, if your student is taking an asynchronous class, the teacher is usually the one that grades the assignments, but there are some parents that want the option to do the grading themselves. That's something you can talk to your advisor about, and give them everything that's going on and what your family needs, and see if you and the advisor can't come up with a solution for the particular student, because what we're wanting is success for that student. So for me, as a parent with online students, we did traditional homeschool format back in elementary school because they didn't have the online program at that time, but that's the format that I wanted. I think it's important, especially at mid-year for online students, is to maybe sit down with parents, of course, and reiterate to yourself, renew your spirit. Meaning, I know with my own students, by late October, early November, everybody's dragging down and everybody's tired and everybody doesn't want to do the reading on time and they don't want to divide the reading up, and there's just, things start to get sort of lazy and lackadaisical. And so over the Christmas holidays, beginning of New Year, people are making New Year's resolutions and that kind of thing. And so it always, I think, is a good idea to sit down and talk with your students about, hey, let's renew our spirit like we did in August. Like, we are going to divide our reading up. We are going to do the reading before class. We are going to do the study guides with the reading like they're wanting us to do. So we're ready to participate in class. Renew your effort to check those homework graded feedbacks that your teachers give you. They give you all, it's like, just pretend like they're handing you a piece of paper back, they're handing your paper back. Read the comments. It's so helpful for your next paper or your next test, because it helps you think, what did I miss? What can I zero in on my reading in the next, concept area? So work on getting into bed at a decent hour, work on getting better nutrition.
Sure.
I like that idea of focusing on that New Year's resolution sort of thing, because I think oftentimes we find that coming back from the Christmas break is a challenge, because it's just like, I just had two to 3 weeks off where I could read what I wanted or sleep in a little bit, or like you're saying, eat what you want and do. But if you could kind of frame it a little bit more like, okay, yes, we are taking this good break off so that we're energized to get back in and do the next semester. That's have to work on that this break.
Well,
Yeah.
you just notice, you notice as parents, I noticed my own students, one of them will say, I just don't want to do those study guide questions. There's so many of them, and I'm just not going to do them today, but then they lament the fact that maybe they didn't do really great on the multiple choice part of an exam, and I'll say, well, you made a choice, right? You chose not to do that particular thing. Choices have consequences. And so let's talk about renewing our vigor towards, doing the things that, we don't necessarily want to do. But I mean, truthfully, we all have things in life that we don't necessarily love to do, but we know we have to do them because they're good for us, unfortunately. So, not fortunately, they are good for us. At any rate, yeah, it's like, and so the new year sometimes is always a good time to do it, and it's at the break of the half of the year. So yeah, I'm a very firm believer in making sure that Christmas is Christmas, and we have time to celebrate our Lord's birth and time to be a family. It's a glorious time.
It's nice that our break is scheduled such that it observes that whole Christmas season. Grateful for that.
Definitely.
Are there other things, Elyse, that you like to do at mid-year? Other things that you're thinking about? Other sort of tune-ups or course corrections, things like that come to the top of your list?
Definitely. This goes along with the whole renewing the vigor part of it. In January, I start thinking about February because I know enrollment begins in February. There's the school meeting usually that happens in February with any kind of new information that Kolbe family needs to know. And then course registration opens in March. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way for everyone, but it is that way for a lot of people. So I especially like to talk to my families about, there's never not a good time to think about the courses that your kids are taking or your students are taking. But it usually tends in my brain to start thinking about it in January and February, because I want to be able to get the courses that I want and the schedules that I want for my students. And that usually the best time to do that is in March and April when those courses open. These are things that I did as a parent years ago. This actually will be my first year that I don't have to enroll anyone, which is a little weird. That's a little strange, but I'll pretend like I'm doing it. And this is what I normally do. Okay, so I go to the website or the parent student handbook and I review the recommended and minimum track for the Kolbe diploma. And then I go and look at my students' report cards or the course registrations, wherever might be those lists of the courses that they have taken. So I know what they have taken. I'm looking at the recommended and minimum, and I know what they need to take. And so I've got those two lists. And the wonderful thing now is there is a high school graduation planner that's in the Help Center. Years ago, I would just get a big piece of paper and different colored pens, and I'd have my required pens in like red and my electives in blue, and I just had it on a sheet of paper. But the graduation planner is very, very similar, and you can download it to your computer, or you can actually print it out if you're a parent like me who likes to have paper and you want to write things down. That's a wonderful visual way for you to see what your student has and what your student needs. Then you can, if you notice gaps and you're not exactly sure, well, what kind of literature are we going to take next year? Or what kind of math are we going to take? If you don't know those things, you can definitely start looking at the course at the different tracks. That's in the academics tab on the homepage. And you can email your advisor and set up an appointment, just email questions. But that way you're sort of ahead of the game by the time enrollment and registration opens in March. It's not something that you have to do like within 24 hours, do in one sitting. I mean, there's a lot of information in the Help Center. So looking at the calendar, like Vanessa said, looking at the recommended and minimum track, making sure you know who your advisor is and how to get in touch with them. Those are all things that I would do as a parent in mid-year. And have done, actually. So
that's great.
Vanessa, I assume most of your kids are younger, right? I mean, as far as like middle, upper middle, and down.
I've got second grade, sixth grade, and seventh grade.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what Elyse was saying was just making me think of like the closer you get to graduation, where you've got these goals, whether it's just the minimum requirements for a high school diploma, or I'm planning on going to college and they have these requirements. your options become smaller as you get closer to that. It's like, no, to graduate, we're going to have to finish these courses. But then, you've got those preparatory years where, like, when you were talking about switching or like saying, okay, world history to just go and focus on medieval. I mean, that is so beautiful for that child who's now got this wonder and this. And when they get a chance to do medieval again in high school, they're going to be like, yes, I can't wait to do
Exactly.
this.
Yeah.
And to know that it's okay. We can switch. We've got lots of time before we have to check off all of those graduation boxes and things like that. So do what's best for the child, and when you can do that, it just seems amazing.
So we're going to start off here in January, and we're going to make a good go at it through President's Day. Then we're going to a little breather, and then we're going to go again through Lent and into the Easter season, and then we're going to have celebrate Easter, and then we're going to come back and finish off strong. We're all
Oh, wow.
Yes,
That's it. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this. Okay.
Yeah,
yeah, and it kind of
It's going
helps
to be a
to kind of
fantastic.
set
Yeah.
the mindset, like, okay, we're going to do this for a bit, then we're going to get a break, and then we're going to go again, and then so it's not like here this long continuous. I don't want to use the word slog, but that's the only word coming to me right now. This long,
I was thinking drag, so we were on the
Yes,
same
we did.
wavelength. Yeah.
We did that once, and I don't recommend it. We went from January to the end of April, and that was.
It's hard. Yes.
I do not recommend that at all.
It's not quite
Now,
how we
granted,
were
my
meant
kids
to
were,
do
like,
it. Yeah.
thrilled. I mean, they were thrilled in May. They're all going out we're going to the zoo and going to parks, and everybody else is in school. And so they were thrilled with that. But the January to April,
Were you a little crispy after that, Elyse, once you got
just
there?
a little
bit.
just
Okay.
Well,
it makes me think of doing like hard physical labor, because we make that run from August to Christmas, and there's a couple of breaks in there, but it's a pretty, but that's at the beginning when you're fresh, and then that second half, it's like when you've kind of already maxed out and you're trying to lift the same weight, and you can't lift it as much or for as long or whatever. So those little breaks are just okay, and you just need to set it down for a little bit and then pick it back up, and I can go a little bit further, and then
That's a great way to look at it. Yep. That's very much the way it feels too.
Yep. And it's tricky with February being we've done a few episodes on the whole February Staredown, as I like to call it, I think one year we did an episode in February about burnout. It's like that's a tough time of year for a lot of folks, just the winter time in North America, and weather and illness and all the things. Just February is a little bit tricky. I remember, especially my first year of homeschooling, going into February with quite a bit of fear, frankly, like how are we going to get through February? And I think we did end up all sick, and here we all are. So we got through it, but it's kind of an interesting mix of what all is on the plate coming.
Right. Well,
I'm
just
soon.
remembering that other Kolbe homeschooling families are doing the same things that we all are doing. That's very helpful. Knowing that now, I didn't understand it way back when we had started so many years ago. Because I sort of felt like I was in the Wild West, doing. I mean, I knew Kolbe had my back if I had any questions, but there's so much support now, and there's so many people that you can talk to that want to help. And so, yeah, February can be a definitely gray kind of month.
That'd be interesting to hear from our listeners too. How do y'all manage February? Like, is it even a thing? It might not be. Here we are, like
maybe not.
February,
I mean,
don't know, but for a lot of folks, it's probably like, okay, it's fine, whatever. All right. And so along the lines of like vacations or whatever, and also the liturgical year, kind of planning around that. In our household, we've got a big theatrical production that goes up in February. This year it's Pride and Prejudice. That is a kind of all in, very consuming couple of weeks where not a lot else is getting done. So we kind of plan at least the offline subjects. We kind of adjust the calendar to accommodate that. And that helps with the online subjects, making those still manageable while we're doing this other very time-intensive activity. I mean, I think many Kolbe families can relate. Vanessa, do you have more that you want to say on this whole topic of kind of taking stock of where we are currently and planning ahead a little bit?
I do. There's two things that I have to be intentional about, and Elyse hit on the enrollment. I tend to like to wait to see where we are in the school year. And I always feel like I'm not ready for that in January yet. So it's something that if I'm not ready to think about now, I know in February when those emails start coming, that enrollment can start, I really need to focus on looking at where we are, what's working, and the same thing, kind of start to assess where are we going next year. So I've got two that are in middle school, one heading to 8th grade next year, that I'm already starting to think backwards in terms of what's needed for high school, because I know where I want them to be at. And so I start to kind of work backward. What do I need to get them to? So all of that starts to go into play in terms of what I'm planning for next year. The other thing is standardized testing. Because I do like to do standardized testing. Some families don't, but we do. We do them every year. And that's something that I always want to be intentional about thinking about and kind of planning in terms of our projected finishes and whether I want to test, 3/4 of the way, or I want to do it now midway, or I want to do it at the end of the year. And if I'll be done with some subjects and not others, which ones do I want to make sure we hit on before I test them? Do I want to finish the math curriculum or the English curriculum before we do standardized testing, or am I okay doing it 3/4 of the way and just knowing that that's where our numbers are going to be when I look at scoring? So those are two things that that I really try to be intentional about, because it's very easy for me to just kind of put those on the back burner, and then before I know it, it's July and I'm scrambling. And we have been on the end of trying to schedule a class, and the class is already full. I learned that lesson a few years back. So that's something that I'm glad Elyse hit on, because as the years have gone, I've tried to be more intentional about planning those two things ahead.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we've had conversations about standardized testings on the Kolbecast. So our show notes are going to be just link rich. We've got lots of links to include in our show notes today. So that's my first plug of the episode. So I'll have all that for listeners. That's a great point to make.
I am a little curious, just because when I think of February, we were talking about that, and I know that's in my mind as kind of the slog month for all homeschoolers. And then I always associate it back growing up in Wisconsin, and in February you have no chance of really a warm spell. You're kind of in month 4 of winter, and you'll get some warm things in March, and then April more so. But Vanessa, in the Keys, where that's not as much of a factor, but you still feel the February kind of slog. But is it different? Is the weather different there?
I wouldn't say it's the weather. For us, it's usually because we're trying to push through, right? And I'm trying to think, if we don't want to work all through the summer, right? We want to push through, because that's what tends to happen to us. So we come back from Christmas break, and we start the new year, and I am usually, right, the one that's like, I roll down the stairs and I just got to get up and keep running. So I'm like dragging through. We've got a bunch of birthdays in January in our family also. Like, it's just back to back to back to back in January. So by the time February hits, I'm exhausted. Like, I need a break as well. It's rubbed off on everyone else. And I'm still trying to push through, because, stubborn is as stubborn does. And I'm like, no, we got to keep going. We don't want to work all summer, right? We've got summer camps coming up. We've got activities. The weather's going to be warm. And for us, it's the water. It's the biggest thing here in the Keys. So the ambient temperature is nice. This time of year, a nice sweater on some days. Some days it's 80 and it's the middle of winter. Cold for us is like in the 50s. When we have meetings for work and they see me with a sweater, they're like, "Oh, Vanessa, it must be in the 50s and 60s there." I'm like, "Yeah, and I'm in a turtleneck." For us, it's
Bundle up.
I could not imagine Wisconsin winter. I could not. But the water, which is one of the great blessings of being here, the water sports, being able to go fishing and go to the beach, and my son is doing sailing now. I am like not 1 foot in the water this time of year. It's like way too cold. So we don't get to enjoy that aspect of being down here during that time. So I always tell the kids, we got to push through this time of year so that when it warms up and we can enjoy it, and we can enjoy going snorkeling and going fishing and all that a little bit more than we can but I end up bogged down around that time of year because the exhaustion of just everything else is just kind of piled up. So that February break is going to be one that's going in my calendar, like blocked out, highlighter, 3 different colors in big bold letters for us as well this year.
Yep. So it's hard too when we get behind and we think, oh, we can make that up during the break. Oh, we need those breaks too. So yeah. Okay. So when we were working on planning this episode, Elyse brought up a great topic to talk about, and that is goes right hand in hand with sort of the planning ahead. We are probably taking stock of this already with our younger students, but with our high schoolers, the whole idea of interests and abilities. And there are several tools available to us to kind of help gauge those, and which can serve as guidance for career paths, college plans, life discernment. There is yet another Help Center article on this whole point, but Elyse, talk to us about interest and ability tools. And I know this is a favorite topic of Stephen's too. So
sure, definitely. With each one of my children in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, there were certain things that I wanted to have like accomplished for each grade in the whole, we got to figure out how to do this college thing kind of thing, because I didn't want all of this stress in the senior year can be stressful enough just from the fact that you understand that your family is going to change. And yes, I mean, while things do remain the same, that one child, that student leaves, and the other children, if there are any, are left behind. And so they are going through a transition just as much as the child that went off to college. Okay, so I just didn't want all that stress in 1 year or in 2 years. So I started thinking about, you think about college choice, you think about career discernment, you think about guidance from, mentors in your life. And so one of the things that I would think about is a discernment of aptitudes for things that my children were naturally able to do or have in their person. Okay, so like my oldest son, we didn't do this with because he was on a path, he knew what he wanted. And so I didn't even think about it for him. But my second son had a lot of different abilities. So I started searching for different ways to understand their interests and abilities, their aptitudes. It's not how much you know or what's in your brain. It's how, God made you. Okay, so in regards to that, we used a particular organization for aptitude testing for 2 of my children. And the wonderful thing about this particular organization was that it gave my husband and me a vocabulary to use when we talked with our children about things that they were interested in or that they were good at. And truthfully, I mean, I can tell you in one particular case with one of my students, we did it the summer before he was a junior. Right. Okay. So after we got the assessment test results back, we sat and talked for probably an hour or hour and a half, 2 hours about the things that the people said that he might be interested in, that he has natural inclination for. And he found something that he might not necessarily have thought about as a career path, but it opened up a whole realm of possibility for a particular college choice, a particular career path. And so this past summer, he was able to go on an internship at this particular college in the particular department that he is going to be in actually this coming August. And he loved it. He's excited about his career path. And if we would not have done that, we would have never known. You as a parent, of course, you know the things your children love, the things your children naturally have strengths in. But the testing that we did gave us the vocabulary to use to be able to talk to him about those things. There are a plethora of different organizations that you can use, some expensive, some not as expensive. And that's the exact article that Bonnie was talking about, interest and ability tools. I mean, think about it this way. Yes, these tests can sometimes, cost a pretty penny, and they do, and we had to save up for one. However, the knowledge that we gained and the confidence that my student gained in understanding the things that he naturally excelled in because of the way God made him helps align his career path with something that he really will enjoy for the rest of his life. And that is, you can't put a price tag on that. It helped us decide the college choice. It helped him decide the major. It helped, I mean, of course, granted, there's prayer and adoration, all of those things that God gives us to help us in the path of discernment, of course. But this was something concrete that he could really get behind and understand. And like the Highlands Ability Battery, you take those tests, it can help you understand the way you communicate, why you communicate the way that you do, you know, why you think a certain way.
You know, I'm a licensed consultant with the Highland Ability Battery, so certainly that's, and so if people are listening to the show and want to get hooked up with, you know, you can click on the website, but they've got consultants all over the place. But both myself and I know a bunch of people who are in homeschooling faithful Catholics who are also consultants, so I can either help them out directly or link them up. But all of that is I think, to kind of to step back to the broad view, is helping your child to discern their particular vocation. So not whether they should be married or a priest, which is that overall, you know, that call, but what in particular is God calling them to do? Because, you know, fortunately, as Catholics, we know that God creates each of our children for a very specific mission in the church to do something. And so God's going to give them the tools that they need to do that mission. So I'm not saying that everybody ends up perfectly aligned. Sometimes it's part of the journey that you're in jobs that don't align with what you're passionate about or what you're best at. You just got to do it. You know, we see that in school too. You just have to do that course, whether you're good at it or not. But these things give you hints and give you, like you said, a vocabulary to discuss. Like, is this something, you know, it's not supposed to tell you what you can or can't do, but if you can align some of those gifts, some of those abilities that you have with something, with interest and something you feel passionate about, you know, all of those things, then it's a really good step in the right direction, rather than just trying that and trying that and trying that. And that works too, but it takes a lot more time.
That's beautifully said, Stephen.
I think these tools are great because they open up the possibilities that we couldn't have. I mean, there's some, you can't know all the possibilities, right? So these kind of shed some light on areas that we may not have even realized existed or hadn't really considered, maybe even passing, you know, possibly in passing, but not with any real depth or anything. So I think those are so helpful. And
sometimes deepens our understanding of things that, just like you said, we hadn't thought about, you know, abilities that we had that really, it hadn't stood out to me that I was good at that. So yeah, really a great tool.
Yeah. Well, one thing I really like is that it does help you to see that people are different than like, you know, an example, I'm really good at packing things, packing cars, trunks, making things. And you watch it, for me, I would watch other people do that and just think, why are you so bad at this?
Oh.
I mean, can't you just see it's there and then you do that? And it's like, oh,
I can relate.
Agree.
It's like Tetris. No, you're moving it the wrong way.
I was just thinking,
better over here.
Stephen and Vanessa, you guys are organizational. Okay. New topic.
You
Another
know,
episode.
Stephen, that's funny that you say that. My husband and I have been married 31 years, and with every trip, I just bring the bags and sit in my car, and he does everything.
There you go.
I'm like, you're good at this. I'm not doing anything. And he's like, okay, great. And he goes to work, you know. Yes.
It's fun. Yeah.
Right.
And that's it.
But
it's fun for you. The other folks are like, oh, just shove it all in there, slam the door. Okay.
And it's just nice to know that there's an actual ability which corresponds to that. Not that you can't learn the skill if you don't have the ability to how do I pack something so it's efficient. But some people are just really good at it, and so they take enjoyment in it. So let them do that, like you said, Elyse,
exactly.
And then and you don't have to be stressed by it. But you know.
And there's ways that can help you, in your career path and what you choose. Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's an interesting, Elise, did you find when you presented the topic of taking one of these inventories or assessment, whatever word, and that's kind of the sticking point. Like, how did you present this to your students? And what was there ever like I don't want to do that, or, it's not for a grade or anything like, how do you like to present that to them?
That's a wonderful question, Bonnie. I don't know if we ever, I mean, I guess we didn't really make it like it was not an option. We were just talking to the two of my students, two of my children knew exactly what they wanted to do. One wanted to go in finance, one wants to be a literature teacher. Okay, so we didn't even, they've been wanting to do that for a long time. Okay, and God placed that on their hearts, and actually one of them probably would like to be a hunting and fishing guide out in Colorado, but he can't make as much money doing that. But maybe he will do that someday.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
The other two, it's not that they were floundering, it's just that nothing was coming to them, but they knew college is coming, and so we've talked about it for years, talking about and trying to make the case, what is God calling to you? I remember as a child myself hearing, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And I never thought about what God wanted me to do.
Yeah.
It was really important for us for them to start thinking, what does God want? Okay, so, they know that I'm a planner, and they know that I don't like waiting to the last minute for lots of stuff. And so I made the case, look, I found this testing corporation. This guy that started it over 100 years ago was a human resource guy. And so he was very interested in people's behavior and why they do certain things and why certain departments at the company that he worked for were more successful than others. He was very interested in that. I haven't done as much research on Johnson O'Connor, but I'd like to. At any rate, they were on board for it. They were really interested in finding out about themselves. And so we made a day of it. We went to Dallas and we had lunch. And, it was that particular test, it was a long thing. So I sat and read, which I'd love to do, while the child went into another room and did the testing for 8 hours, and their breaks and whatnot. And we went to have lunch, and we went and had dinner, and so it was sort of like a mom kid kind of day where we just focused on that particular student, and so that's how we framed it. So they didn't balk at it at all. They were interested in finding out about themselves. Yeah.
That's neat. I like how you presented that. Like it's it's for them.
It was. Yeah. It's really right. It's really for them to understand how they work better. And that's an important self-reflection. I think self-observation is something that's lacking in society today. We don't look at ourselves. We're always projecting. What are you doing? You're not doing the right thing. You're not, instead of looking within. And so they were interested in finding out.
I've encountered two forms of resistance basically to that. So this is why I like the Johnson O'Connor or the Highlands Ability Battery and the Clifton Strengths. The ones you have on that help article are good ones. But one thing that people can come away with is like they have the experience of the online Myers-Briggs sorts of things. And they say, even the Myers-Briggs is supposed to be done with a consultant. You're not supposed to just jump online and I'm these 4 letters sorts of things. It's because, but putting that aside, they don't want to be put in a box. They don't want to be told this is the way you are. And that's like why even with the Highlands Ability Battery, we have to have a consultation afterwards, because the other reason I see is that people say, what if I don't have any strong abilities? What if I get all low scores when you do this? It's like, that's not a weakness. Actually, there are certain things will be harder for you than they are for other people, but that would be the way that you are. And here's all of the strengths that come from that sort of thing. So we can tell them, but our kids are used to standardized tests, for the most part, or like I got an 11% on this test. It's like I failed it. No, that's not a failure. So it's hard for them at times. So that if they go in afraid that, fundamentally what they're afraid of is like, maybe I'm no good. Maybe God didn't make me for anything good. And that's false, so we have to try to break that. But But and you can with like the Johnson O'Connor or these people that talk to the students, but those are two apprehensions that I see when those come up. So I don't force all of my children to do the high ability battery, but I invite them to when they're ready and they want to, and we talk about it a lot. So
yeah, nice. All right, we just have a little bit of time left here together, but Elyse, I was really curious about something you mentioned as we were planning this episode, and that was the idea of kind of assessing who might need some TLC at this point in the year. And I'd love for you to dive into that a little bit.
Homeschooling isn't for the faint of heart. It's truly a lifestyle of your family, a vocation for your family. It's not something you go into haphazardly. It's very, in my experience, most people that I talk to that do homeschool have really searched their hearts and minds knowing, this is something that God has placed on my heart that I want to do. So what do you do in the middle of the school year when you're drowning in all of the assignments and your kids are balking at wanting to do this and you feel alone? You're wondering, how in the world are we going to get to May? So that's a very real feeling. And the only thing that I can tell you, especially that worked for me, but that our faith gives us such tremendous help in his infinite wisdom. He gave us the sacraments. He knows us, but being able to say that in front of him, pray that in front of him, in front of the Blessed Sacrament in adoration, you pour your heart out to him. Those are the kinds of things that help get me through to the end of the year. Reminding myself of the big picture, going back and rereading information about what is classical education, what is Ignatian education, what does that mean? Finding people at Kolbe that can help you better understand the reasons for why Kolbe does the way it does, why the curriculum is formed the way it is. I was in a homeroom class last spring and I was giving a talk to some 6th graders about going into 7th grade and 8th grade. And I told them to think about like a big domed stadium, and the big picture is the whole dome, and you're sort of hovering over the football field, and you're hovering over the 10, 20, 30, 40, all the little things that have to get done so you get to the end of the year, which of course is the goal line. But sometimes you got to stop and look up, and you've got to think of the big picture. And so giving yourself that grace and being gentle with yourself to realize, of course, Rome wasn't built in a day. This homeschooling thing isn't going to get figured out the first year or the second year, or maybe even the third. In fact, I would say the third year of homeschooling, Bonnie, you can probably agree with me here, Vanessa. You're in see, Vanessa's smiling right now. I can see the third year was probably my hardest year because, I had, first, third, 6th, and 8th. Yeah, first, third, 6th, and 8th. The things that helped me through were, calling Kolbe, asking for advice, which I did. Reminding myself, why am I doing this? For what purpose is this? What am I wanting? Well, I want my children to understand their faith, and I want them to be critical thinkers. And of course, when you're looking at one ridiculous, diagramming exercise in grammar, you think, how's this going to help? But it does, because it builds on, and so looking at the big picture, stepping back, going to adoration, taking a day off, drinking some tea, doing those kinds of things are all the TLC that helped me. And I'm betting that they helped tremendous others as well. So when you say TLC, that's what I'm thinking of. It's reminding yourself, re-engaging, renewing your spirit, like we talked about earlier, reminding yourself of the big picture of what you're wanting at the end of all of this, at the end of their 12th grade year. And of course, you don't necessarily know what that's going to look like. But because we have a faith and we do trust, we know that God is going to carry us through. And that's what got me through that third year into the fourth.
So glad you brought that up, Elyse, because I feel like maybe it's a mom thing. We tend to focus so much on how the kids are doing, what subjects are working, at least for me, I'm like down to worried about efficiency. What do we have to do? What boxes are we checking? What are we not? And I'm so worried about everyone else. And we don't stop to kind of focus on how we're doing. And I mean, that rolls perfectly back into what we were talking before about, February. We don't have the freezing weather here, but it's about the time where I crash because I haven't taken the time to do that. And I've just carried more and more, and the load is just more and more on my own shoulders. And eventually there are consequences for that. It's not pretty. So,
well, I mean, and that's one of the reasons why fortitude is one of those cardinal virtues, the fortitude, continuing even when things are hard. But really, and I didn't do this well years ago. I'm doing it better now, to stop and sit down and have a cup of tea, take that 10 minutes to refigure out what the rest of your day is going to look like. There were many times when I just slogged through because I wasn't taking assessment of myself. And if mom, I mean, I know you hear that if mom isn't happy, ain't nobody happy. I mean, and yeah, okay, that's true. But the mom is the linchpin to this whole, okay, maybe dads are the linchpin too. Stephen, you're very important to your family and you need to be there giving all that support because you're supporting Maggie. And it takes everyone. So, maybe that's something, taking the TLC time, taking the family time to talk to each other about how each one can help. I mean, that's why we're a family, right? I mean, God gave us these children to bring about his kingdom on earth, and they have a role to play just like the parents do. And so it's taking the time to sit down and contemplate how everyone can help each other to continue this mission that they're doing towards the end of the school year.
Yeah, so we can give our best, very much so.
Right.
You can't give your best if you're not at a place that you can do that. And sometimes that TLC is needed so that you're able to do that.
Right.
Right.
For the kids to be healthy, they need healthy parents. Yep.
I think it's important that people kind of reflect on that. We live in a very different sort of society or a different world than traditionally what happened. So for most homeschooling mothers, particularly, or families, it's like you're a pioneer, because it used to be that the fathers would be working on the farm, traditionally, or they're there in and out. They might be in the fields, but the family was always together. The extended family was largely together. There was a huge area of support that every family had beyond just mom, dad, and the kids. For most of us, that's the world today. It's mom, dad, and the kids. And often in our traditional families, it's dad's off all day long, coming home tired from being out in the workforce. Mom feels like she's all alone at home there, making this huge, and that's hard. And I don't think it's the way things are supposed to be. But I would say, if you're the homeschooling mom, often, and your husband is supportive of you, it's always good if you can share the burden. So the dads, if you're the homeschooling mom, is a point. But I will say, you probably have to tell them that you don't want them to fix the problems first. So go into that conversation saying, I just don't fix anything. I just want to let you know this is really hard right now, and we've got it. We'll make it through. But I just, and then the dad can think, okay, I could do this to support and things. But otherwise, he'll try to fix the problem most of the time. At least that's what I try to do. And that's not usually what my wife wants. But also, as you were saying earlier, Elyse, that's why we have Kolbe. To provide the curriculum and those things, but also to provide the support. So if you just need somebody to say, if you're feeling that way, reach out. Your advisor is there to help you carry the burden. And sometimes just knowing that you can share it, even if they don't do anything that you wouldn't have thought of on your own, Now you've shared it with somebody. They'll support you in prayer and whatever they can do to help you. So
Exactly. That's exactly right.
The Kolbe staff and faculty pray for all the Kolbe families
Definitely.
every day. All right, good deal. So I'm hoping everybody is feeling renewed and ready to re-engage with some resolutions as we get going on the second semester of 2025, or whenever folks are listening to this episode in the future. I want to make mention of an upcoming parent partnership meeting on January 15th, 2025. Enrolled families will get emails with information on how to participate in that. As I mentioned before, our show notes are going to have a whole list of links of things that came up during our conversation today and related topics or items of help and interest. Any final thoughts before we close out today?
Many prayers for a good spring semester.
Yes, indeed. I always love the reading on January 1st, Mary, Mother of God, the blessing from the book of Numbers. I think that's always a lovely way to start the new year. Thank you, Vanessa and Elyse, for joining us in this conversation today. Wish you both the best second semester yet coming up, and we'll look forward to the next time we get to visit with you here on the Kolbecast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, y'all. Y'all have a wonderful new year.
Thank you.
subscribe to the Kolbecast on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. And let us know how we're doing by leaving a rating or a review. And as always, feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary, our Mother, pray for us. St. Maximilian Kolbe, St. Ignatius of Loyola, holy saints and angels, pray for us. Ad maiorem Dei gloriam.